Okay, now we're going live, so go right ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Muir, and good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure to be presenting to you today. I won't be long, and I want the session to be interactive. So if I ask a question, guys, I expect that you are going to interact with me, all right? Right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good. That's what I want to hear. All right, so I have been asked to talk about writing effective research reports, and that entails quite a lot. Now, if I should ask you, and I'm sure because you have all been fully engaged in your major projects, you have an idea of what the research process is like, and I'm sure you have already experienced various challenges. And if I should ask you about some of the major challenges you have experienced so far, I perhaps would get quite a few. All right. Now, I'm going to assume that one of the major challenges you're going to have is to get your research report to be 10 pages or less. Now, conducting a research can be very intriguing. The part that becomes very challenging for a number of persons is writing the actual research. So getting the things done, doing all of those things, you may be very excited to do that, but the part that gets you demotivated is when you actually have to write, put whatever you have practiced into writing. And that, of course, may be due to several factors, including your apprehension for writing, you just don't like writing, or you're just lazy, right? But for whatever the reason is, we are going to look at the aim of this presentation is really to help you in eliminating some of the challenges that you're facing, including how you are going to transform your research, which may be several pages based on all the things that you have done. How can we compress this to 10 pages or less? And that's definitely not an easy feat. And so we're going to be looking at some of the factors. So as we go through the session, we want to look at some key things that will help us to achieve our target. One, what is the structure of your report? What does it look like? What should you include so that you can receive the ultimate grade? And there's a prize to be won. Who wouldn't want to win that as well? So there are a number of factors at stake that we want to take into consideration. Now, as I said, whenever we are talking about research, we cannot leave out the writing part. And so a research can be very good, but if how it is presented, the written format is not effective, it can take away from the research, and your readership may not be interested in fact, based on how it is presented, it can come off as a turn off to the reader. And so if your research is effective, you want to ensure that you are also employing effective academic writing techniques or skills. Once you're doing research, you're going to be looking at using figures and tables to present the data that you have collected. There is a specific way in which we do that. We don't just get up and haphazardly throw in a table or throw in a graph or a chart. There is a specific way, and so we're going to be looking at that. Of course, once you're doing research, the question of documentation comes into play, and we are using the APA 7th edition, which means we're going to be looking at that in brief, of course, as well as some editing skills. And while we look at each of these areas, we're going to be looking at some of the major pitfalls that will not just students but researchers sometimes make that can have negative implications on the final product of the research, and what can be done to eliminate some of these errors or pitfalls. All right, if at any time you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat, or you can write them down to ask at the end. All right, so or you can raise your hand and I'll allow you to speak. All right, so before we turn our focus on the structure of a research report or a research paper, it is imperative that we spend just a few minutes to look at the key characteristics of writing effective research reports. Right now, remember, research is a process. So you would have done academic writing 1 and 2, and the process approach to writing would have been employed. And as we note, writing is not something that, or effective writing is not something that you get up. If you're, let's say your major project paper is due tomorrow, you don't just get up today and write and then submit tomorrow. It's a process. And so you want to ensure that there is that you are utilizing this process so that you can make the best use of the writing that you're doing. All right, so we're looking at brainstorming, going through, making sure that you have a clear understanding what it is that you want to do. You're preparing your outline. So the same principle applies with research. It is a process. Now, while you are going through the process, while you're going through the actual research, and while you're doing the write-up, there are some key principles or characteristics that you want to focus on. First one include the focus of your paper. You want to ensure that your research emphasizes the importance or the important information that you want to convey to your readership. So your skit students, so let's say you are introducing a new program, a new app. The major details that you want to be conveyed throughout the paper, that emphasis has to be placed on that major thing. And that's what we will refer to as your thesis, that key or central idea. All right, so you want to ensure that focus, it has to be evident. Anybody that reads the paper, starting from the abstract all the way to the conclusion of your paper, that idea should be very evident. No question asked as to what is the focus of your paper. Accuracy is another key principle. Now, bear in mind that at this level, you are to be presenting factual information. Your information has to be free from errors. You cannot afford to be misleading your readership when they are reading the research, because once that takes place, the credibility of your paper will be lost. You as a researcher, of course, if I take up your paper and there are all sorts of inaccurate information there, then I'm not going to be willing. If I see you write something another time, I'm not going to want to read your paper, because I'm like, the last time I read something for this researcher, it had a lot of misleading information, and so I'm not going to bother with it any at all. So we have to be careful that we are producing accurate information. Clarity, that's key. Now, you want to ensure that, and there are times when, although you are presenting factual information, it may not be presented in a clear or logical manner. And so we have to ensure that as we produce facts, as we show, as we highlight information, we want to ensure that this is done in a very clear manner. Whatever content or conclusion that will be drawn by your readership, it should be free from ambiguity. So if I read something about a program that you have developed, or service that you intend, programming service that you intend to offer, then I should not think that, oh, it could mean this or this. It should be clear, and the meaning you have intended to convey should be the same meaning that I have received. All right, so it's very important, concise. And this is where it becomes even difficult, because I was actually looking for any of the research that I have completed in 10 pages. I had a struggle doing that. So I know, and I can admit that it's not very easy to get the information to be concise. However, one of the critical characteristics of effective research reports is that it is concise. It's to the point. It should not entail unnecessary information. It cannot be too lengthy. In your case, you are presenting information that is 10 pages or less. So this will take quite a lot of time for you to work on your summary writing skills to ensure that you are going to be eliminating unnecessary information and you're only including major or critical information. So if it's not a main idea, then it should be eliminated from your piece. All right. So only adequate information, only necessary information will be included in your paper if you want to meet this paper. Also, if the research is too long, the truth is, who wants to read it? In fact, sometimes persons only read through an abstract, and unless it's very intriguing and grabs the audience you're trying to attract, then oftentimes it's a turn-off when they have to read very long research papers. And then, of course, it must employ effective academic writing skills. All right, and so this is very important. The language that we use, we want to ensure that overall the paper is free from grammatical errors. And when we talk about effective academic writing, what are we looking at? Right, so it's very critical. The language choice, the word choice, the tone in which we write, these are all things that we will have to bear in mind. And so when we talk about research, it is generally in tandem with the key characteristics of effective academic writing. And academic writing, like all other forms of writing, is usually governed by a set of conventions. All right. Now, when we look at academic writing, it is one in which you are conveying information in a clear and logical manner. It must express some level of formality. Therefore, you must be utilizing acceptable and appropriate register, right? So you're going to avoid using any form of colloquial expressions, slangs, or languages, any form of idiomatic language. You want to avoid using abbreviated or shortened versions or forms of words. That includes contractions, so the don't and the isn't. You want to write those out and not be lazy by using those. All right, they are not considered and part of academic writing. And so if you write that, then it makes your research or your paper less formal than you want it to be. All right. Precision, which we spoke of earlier, which also has to making your papers concise as best as possible. So we see the overlap taking place here with academic writing and effective research. There's no room for inaccuracy. It has to be free from ambiguity, and you must be able to verify the quality of the information that you are presenting. The paper must be reliable. You must be able to look at the credibility of the information you're presenting. All right, so if you're citing other sources, other authors, or your readership should be able to go and find this information there to verify that you are indeed presenting factual information. This, of course, is a little different if you are presenting the results, so you're showing or you're contributing new knowledge to what you have actually researched. Then that part is a little bit different. Yes.
What is hedging?
Hedging is the use of cautionary language. And this is something that we talk about in academic writing a lot,
Right.
especially academic writing 1, where if you are proposing something, but the research is actually not concrete, the facts, it's a topic that it's not finalized based on the research that you have done, then certain words like might, likely, appear to, those would be hedging language. You'd want to use those so that it shows that there is, it speaks to the level of certainty regarding the information you're presenting. So when you use hedging language, what it does, your readership will pick up that, okay, this is not 100% factual, but because of how it is presented, it will not allow them to say that, you know, that Susan is not a credible writer. It shows that you are hedging on the side of caution.
Right.
So anything that you're
instead of
not
saying, for example, that this research proves, you would say, I think that it either indicates or it suggests.
Exactly, it suggests that. That's exactly it.
Thank you for the answer.
Yeah, man, no problem. Accuracy, again, the vocabulary that you're using. So you are skit students, so you should know the jargon that is generally used in your language, whatever scientific terms, because generally academic writing is complex. There's no going around it. Although as best as possible you want to present in a simple, logical manner, there are times when you cannot avoid using those specialized jargon, and you want to show that you're studying, it's your field, this is the area, and usually the audience you're catering to would also be people within your field. So these are things that you will also take into consideration, making sure that you are correctly documenting information that you're using. And of course, we're going to be talking about the APA 7th edition shortly. All right, your paper must be objective. So you're emphasizing the facts and the evidence that you have. You also want to ensure that you avoid writing in the passive voice. You want to use active. So you know the by phrase. So using so and so and so, you want to present in an active voice. All right. So let's talk about the structure of your report. What should be included in your report? All right, now your report, first of all, and although I'm going to list these because this is the order in which it would be presented in the written document, in terms of doing the writing up, this is not always how the format in which it is done. All right, and I'm going to explain why. So you should generally have a title for your research paper, right? And in your title, it clearly describes the main idea of what it is that you are proposing, you're promoting, what it is that you are researching. Generally, a good title has about 12 words. Now, when we're counting words, we are not very, we're not a stickler in terms of saying structure in the report would be 3 words, right? So we have what we refer to as waste words. So words like, if you're talking about study or you use certain verbs, those you would exclude from your count. All right, and then of course in your title you're not going to have abbreviations at all. If it is that it is you have words that could be abbreviated, when you move further then you can include the abbreviation, but you wouldn't do so in your title. And then the abstract, right? The abstract generally reflects the main content of your paper. You in business, it is often referred to like an executive summary, right? An executive summary of the paper. So it reflects the main content of the paper. It tells what is the purpose of your research, what form of methodology or research design you use, including the instruments. It sums up that. Your findings and conclusions, and the value of the paper. What is the significance of the research that you have done? Now, the abstract, although it is usually the first thing, the abstract is written last, right? Or should be written last, because it is really after you have done your conclusion, after you have done everything, that you can easily now write your abstract. And depending on the different assignments, you may be given a word limit for your abstract. It may be 100 words, it may be 250 words. Most time, an abstract is never more than 300 words, right? Depending on the different journals or the assessments, assignment details that you're working with. And with your abstract, you want to usually have about 3 to 4 keywords. What are some of the things, the words that will be consistent throughout your paper? Then you'd find that in the abstract. So especially for your presentation coming up, your abstract will generally, that's the one thing that will be focused on. So you want to ensure that your abstract is well written and you spend time and look at it, what it is that the focus of your paper was, and how you go about, what sort of methodology did you use, or research design. So did you use a mixed methods approach, where a combination of qualitative and quantitative methods, or did you focus on a quantitative study? Did you use something different? Whatever research methods you employed, that is something that you would indicate, and then identify what were the key findings coming out of that research that you have conducted, and what sort of conclusions have you drawn based on your findings, and of course, the looking at the value of your research. Because you're working with a 10-page, notice that I have included an introduction slash literature review. So in this case, because you're working with 10 pages or less than 10 pages, you're not going to do both. You would have an introduction that would include a semi-literature review. So in your introduction, and as simple as it is, the introduction possibly is one of the most difficult parts to write. Why? Because it has several parts, and it also sets the tone for your paper. So it's something that you have to spend the time to get the write-up. You're looking at the background to your research that you have done. You're looking at the importance of the problem, that your research problem, looking at your questions, formulating your research questions or hypotheses, and the rationale for conducting the research. So outside of the fact that this is your major project and you have to satisfy this in order to meet the various requirements for matriculation, what is the fundamental reason for doing this? Why have you launched, why do you seek to develop this app? Right, that is what you're looking at. And then of course, you will insert your mini review of literature, which is really a synthesis. So those of you who would have done academic writing 1, you would have done an assignment called the synthesis summary essay, and the same principles that you would have employed when you did academic writing 1, that's what you're working with now. So you're going to be faced with a barrage of information, and you cannot possibly give every or write every detail that you gather from, let's say you have looked at 20 different articles, which is similar to what you're writing on or what you intend to build on. You can't possibly cite from all of them, or you can't include everything that you want. So you're going to read through carefully, you give a comparison and contrast, you look at what is most suitable based on what you are writing on, and you synthesize and summarize from that and give that information. And of course, making reference to, because ultimately you're going to draw back on this information in your introductions slash mini review when you are at the discussion section of your paper. All right, then we talk about methods and or research designs. They are not necessarily the same, but I won't go into that part with you in terms of discussing the whole details. But whichever one you decide to work with, perhaps we should say methods. What methodology did you employ? right, to conduct your research. And in looking at the methodologies, there are some key things that you would want to include. You want to talk about your participants, right? And in looking at your participants, there are some key demographics that you may want to include. First of all, where are your participants from? If it is that your research focus on a set of persons. Are they UTech students? Then you'd want to capture that. Is there specific age group, nationality, where they live, or anything, any other demographic information that you'd have collected? Then you'd want to ensure that you cover that detail within the participant section. All right. Are they part-time or full-time, whatever? The instruments that were used to collect the data. What sort of instruments? Was it just that, did you use a questionnaire? Did you conduct a focus group? And in doing the focus group, you had a little focus group guide that you use, or interview protocol. Were you the ones to develop the questionnaire, if it is that you, or did you simply take one from one that already exists? Now, if it is that you used an instrument that was developed, then it is important that you acknowledge whose instrument you are using. All right, so you'd want to ensure that that is cited. If you created your own, that's fine, but this will also mean that you will also have to do your test to ensure that you verify the validity and the reliability of this test, and one that is something that can be used. All right, so it's important to ensure that you identify. If you use one research instrument, then you give that. If it's more, whichever how many you use, you want to ensure that that is included. And of course, how did you, or the procedure now, you want to talk, and this is the bulk of the methodology section. How did you conduct the research? So this now relies you going back to note all the little details. So I hope that you have your little journal, and every time you work, is this a group project or you're working individually?
Group project.
Group project, right. So I hope that every time after you would have done something, collected the data, then you would have your little briefing and you have your journal where you're making a note. If not, you're going to have to now go back to note in full details what you have done, right? So it must be written in such detail that I should be able to take up your project and replicate that research. What do I mean by replicate? I should be able to copy it and get the same results. And this is why you want to spend time to ensure that you don't miss out any tiny detail. You're still being concise, but you're giving all the details, how you went about conducting the research. That's what will be included in the procedure. And of course, once you have conducted your research, so you used a questionnaire, you actually did an interview or a focus group, then after you have collected the data, you now need to see what are the results. So whether you would have, if it was a questionnaire involved, or let's say you worked with quantitative data, then now you're going to have to either put your information in SPSS, or you simply use frequencies to get the results of your paper. All right, so in looking at the results of your paper, you are really presenting the information that you have gathered. Now, when you write your results, this is where you are including any statistical information. And these are usually presented in tables, graphs, figures, charts, right? And we're going to be talking about that next. That's where you're presenting all of those details there. Then, of course, after you present the details, then you come to, again, the most important part that you need to write up as well, your discussion. So yes, you have presented what are the results of your paper. What about it now? How does this relate to the other parts of your paper? So this is where you are explaining how the results of the methods that you have carried out, how it approves or disapproves your hypothesis or research questions, right? And this is where you're now making the link based on what the literature says. Did you see something similar working out when you did your research, or is it different, and what possibly could lead to that? And this is where you're now drawing on your use of hedging language, because if it is that it disagrees, you're not 100% sure, but now based on what you have done, there's a high possibility that this happened because of so and so. And this is where you're ensuring that although you're not being writing in absolute terms, you're using the hedging language to show that this is your idea as to why the data or the results of the data is the way it is. And of course, every good paper must have a conclusion, right? So and generally, when I look at research papers, I tend to look at the abstract and look at the conclusion. When I read both, I should be able to get the same sense of what is presented there. All right, so the conclusion, you're wrapping up, no new information being presented. You're simply finalizing. In some instances, you may make recommendations. So let's say you wanted to build an app to fix something. So let's say that students at UTech, they have trouble citing, and you work on building a Find and Cite app so that students can improve on their overall APA 7th edition documentation. So in presenting that app, you want to perhaps make some form of recommendations for use or something like that. Then you can also include a recommendation. Of course, you cannot have your research without citing references. All right, so there must be a reference list, and throughout the body of your paper, you would have been citing the sources that you have used. And so on your reference page, there must be a correspondence of what was used along with in the body that must be reflected on that reference page. And then, of course, if you have additional information that you merely made reference to in the paper, that could be included in the appendix, or the appendices, depending on how many things you have there, then you would include that. All right, so that's it for the structure. Now I want to talk back a little bit more about the results. So we did say that when you are presenting your results, you tend to utilize numbers and data in your work. And so you're not just getting up and just using any number, any table. There's a specific way in which this is done. And so it is important that we understand how we present and what we present. And do we really need to present the information in a table, in a graph? All right, now, generally, tables and graphs are useful to present a large amount of information efficiently, as well as to make your data more understandable, more comprehensible. We're not trying to, our focus is not on visually appealing, right? So in research, that's not the aim. So if you're going to just do include a figure because this looks attractive, needless we do that. It really should be helping you to make your paper better. Now, tables are generally used to show numerical values, right? So if you look at the image that I have on my screen here, so I used means and standard deviations. So that's beautifully captured there. All right, as well as if I wanted to present some textual information. Early on, you saw a figure which I actually took from my dissertation about the characteristics of academic writing. All right, so what we do now, if it is that we have these, now let's make it clear. When we talk about figures, figures are used to talk about, it may be charts, it may be graphs, photographs, drawing, any other illustration. Once it is not text, then it is considered as a figure. All right, and so it's very important that we understand how these are used. And so I'm going to stop sharing for a bit and to also share with you another document that I create, and I will send with your coordinator so that she can share it with you if this is information you think you may need. But it is very important that we understand how we present our tables and figures. For one, any visual, any table or figure that you use, it must have a numbered caption and must have a clear descriptive title. So table 2, and notice my title, descriptive statistics for questioning team scores by refinement and year. If I have a figure, again, so we want to ensure numbers, they must be numbered in consecutive numbering, right? So tables, they have their own numbering, figures have their own numbering. So tables 1 through, if you have 10 tables, then table 1, table 2, table 3, all the way to table 10. And again, if you have 5 figures, you're not adding after the table. It would be figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, figure 4. All right, so it's very important to note that. Now, when you are presenting the information within the body of your paper, you want to ensure that you refer to the caption number. All right. If you're given a figure, label all units. So you're using the X, you have X and Y axes. You want to ensure that that is included, your legends, any column, boxes, parts of diagrams, any of those things. You want to ensure that they are clearly labeled. They provide, let's say you did not create the image that you use, then so you get a photograph from somewhere, you're going to have to cite it because it's not yours. If you create your thing, then there's no need to provide any source for that. All right, and as I said, the caption, they must be placed above the tables or figures. So any figures or tables that you're using in your document, they must be discussed in your text. All right, so never write as seen in figure 1 or table 1 below. Why? Because sometimes when going through your data, sometimes it may not be above, it could be below, so you avoid using that. Refer to them instead by their numbers. So see figure 1 for a detailed schematic of so and so, or the results of the test are summarized in table 1. Always make reference to the numbers rather than saying as shown in table below, in the table below. make reference to it. All right, so remember now, the table itself or the figure should be able to be a standalone. So when your readers look at your table, it should be clear. They should be able to understand it without going to the text. If they want more information, then clearly it's fine that they will go to the text to see what else you, but it's remember now, one is not a replacement of the other, it is supplementing what you give. So you'd have made some reference, but you're not giving full details. All right, so you want to ensure that that is done. So let me stop sharing for 1 second and let me just show you a little document that I had used that I actually took from the APA 7th edition. So when I was working on my own research, and let me just pull this up a little bit so it's a little clearer. And as I said, I can send it to you. Generally, I think it is mistaken that person would just go to a Word document and create their tables. That's not the correct thing to do. All right, so what you want to do is to create your tables in Excel, and then you copy from Excel into Word. All right, and then you will get your table looking like what I was showing on my screen previously. So you use tables if you have 8 or more numbers that go together. So you have, let's say you have 4 sets of means and 4 sets of of standard deviations, right? So, or if you're presenting textual information, as long as it's a large number, then you present that as well. Tables must be flush left. Right, so it's simple flush left here. If you look on screen here, it's simple making reference to align left. All right, so that's what we mean here when we go to the paragraph section of our Word document of Excel, whatever Microsoft document that you're using. All right, table numbers usually appear first, and this is above the table, and again it must be flush left. The table titles, they appear second. It should be in italics and should also be flush left. And it cannot be longer than the table itself. So if it is so, then you need to scroll it onto a second line. All major words in your title must be capitalized. You have to center the headings over the columns. They must be lined up at the decimal points. And they should have the same number of digits after the decimal points, unless you have the number where you're giving both the number and the percentage, right? Because the number will not necessarily have the decimal. Every note under the table must end with a period. And if we go back to it, you will see you should not repeat numeric results in both table and text. So as I said, you're not trying to give additional information. Whatever the bulk of the information will go in the table, and then an explanation of what is there is what will be in your discussion. All right, refer to the table in the text above. All right, place the table after that paragraph, and if it doesn't fit, then you want to leave it at the end, but don't leave any blank space, because that can be problematic. All right, and then of course, if you're working with, then of course the double spacing, that's very important. And what I have done is, if you're using a Mac computer, then you would have to use 0.5. If you're not, then you just work with the regular guidance that I have provided here. It provides strict instructions in terms of the format and size, what you need to do. So I have done what should be done if you have a Mac computer, and if you're working with a regular user, then it should work. So it goes through guiding you through, telling you how you can work on this and some other information that I think might be useful to you. And for those of you who are, and you don't have to go in depth with the other thing, unless you're moving on to a master's or a doctoral degree, then you won't necessarily, I'm sure, as undergraduate students, we are not going to be penalizing you to the fullest of extent at this level, but the higher you go, the standards become much greater. So you don't have to pay too much attention to the other information, but you want to ensure that you try to learn how to put it together in this way.
So two things. One is, I don't hear any students asking questions, so I'll ask them. Are you providing this to them? And then secondly,
I will send it to you.
Okay, and then I can load it on the Google Classroom that we have. And the second thing is, how, if I'm a student, how do I decide between a table versus a figure?
All right, so deciding.
Just to remind everybody, guys, you don't present the data, you never presented both. So you have to make a choice. It's either a table or a figure. Right, so now you can go ahead and answer my question.
Right, so it's never an easy question to answer as to what should be chosen. It's really left up to the individual, the researcher, to decide whether they want to utilize the table or chart, or figure. However, when it comes on to numbers, then tables is really what should be used, right? So once you're, especially if you're working with a quantitative research, you want to ensure that you're using the tables and not so much the chart. But then again, it depends on you. There's no full thing as to say which one should be used. Even from the, I am scrolling through the APA manual right now, and it still tells you that there's really, it's really dependent on you as an individual in terms of which it is that you want to do. But what they do have that you can use to guide you are checklists in terms of the table and the graphs, and so I could also share that information, and then what you will do is to go through and determine if, based on these, is it better if I have a table or the checklist, right? So that's what, these are some of the questions. So is the table necessary? Is the figure necessary? Or does it belong in print? Or can it be placed in a supplemental material, right? So they have a whole list of questions that you can ask, and then from there on you determine which you'd want to use. All right, so there's a whole section in the APA manual on this titled tables and charts, tables and figures rather, that you can actually use to guide you, and it's like from pages 195 to 235, so it's quite a lot going through, telling you what to do. All right, so these are some of the things that you want to bear in mind. So as I said, this is how it looks. And of course, as I said, you simply do it in Excel, and then you just copy and paste it into the Word document. I also have, what are you seeing on screen?
Making APA tables in
Okay,
Excel.
you're still seeing that. All right, let me do a new share then. All right, so I did some other sample tables here, and I also have them in Excel. So I don't know if you'd want a sample Excel paper as well as the conversion to Word. So a code, if it is that you want to say, just let me know and I will compile all the resources and I could send it. So you have an idea to work with. All right. That guides you through how you present. So remember when we were talking about having the period at the end? So this is what we're looking at here, or how it should be.
Oh, that's very precise.
Yeah.
That's all I would have to say, very precise. I know that these students are even having challenging understanding what PLS, because I teach them this. They're having enough challenge understanding what the P less than 0.01 and P less than 0.05 means. But anyway, but Brianna says she will love what you
right.
So we have the more diligent students who are looking for their A pluses. So Brianna says she will love it.
All right.
Some actually plainly told me they just want to pass. So what the ones who are looking for their A pluses are looking for that kind of detail.
So I will definitely share that, including my presentation slide. All right. So now to the section that many persons do not like, APA 7th edition, and it's not really anything to like or anything that is difficult. I always tell students, this is actually the easiest part because you are not doing this on your own. And why is it that we love to put ourselves in a position where we feel like we have to do this all by ourselves? We have a manual, we have resources that we can use to guide us when we are looking at APA 7th edition. And so two major things we have to bear in mind, that our in-text citations and our reference list. Anything that is used within the body of your research, you must have a corresponding list at the end. All right, so you can't have research, you can't have sources on your reference list that is not included in the in-text, and vice versa. Everything must correspond. So if you use 10 sources in the body of your paper, when I read through your reference list, it must have 10 papers as well, and they must be the same thing. All right, so I took this directly from the APA 7th edition manual that speak to the two major in-text citation styles. We have the parenthetical citation style, and that simply means that this is where you present the information first, and then you have the author's detail in brackets or parentheses. All right, and by author's details, we're simply working with the APA 7th edition style, author date citation style. So you give the author's last name and you give the year when the source you have used was published. So if we look at this parenthetical citation style here, we have the author Luna and the year when the material was published in 2020. The narrative citation style, as the name narrate suggests, you write first, so you use certain signal words. So for example, Luna 2020 highlighted or postulated that tables and graphs must be numbered consecutively in a research paper. Of course, I'm making that.
And this is where I need to interject, because apparently Microsoft Word deals well with the parenthetical citation. It seems as if it doesn't deal with the narrative citation, and students are using Word. I don't understand what I see. So they're using software to do it for them, and they don't realize that when it comes at the beginning of the sentence or whatever, it needs to be like the narrative citation.
I always tell my students, do not use Microsoft Word. They don't get it right. And I'm going to share with you a few citation managers that you can use afterwards. But don't use Microsoft Word. It's the worst of them all, and it is so annoying. Yeah. Avoid using that. All right, because as your lecturer says, it don't get the narrative part well at all, and it would be good sometimes to use the mixture. Right? If you have two authors, once you use the parenthetical citation format, you don't use the word and, you use the ampersand, which is the and sign. right? So this is used once you're using parenthetical citation. If you're using narrative, which means that you're introducing the author before the information highlighted by the author, then you must use the word and. All right, so how do we remember all of these? There's no need to always just, when I send this to you, just print this thing and keep it. So every time you're citing or you have somebody in your group who will focus on the APA, and you make sure that you have this little table here in front of you and you use it to guide you. Am I using the narrative style? Should I use and, or when do I use and as opposed to when do I use the ampersand? That's all. If we have 3 or more authors, then we must use the phrase et al, right? Latin phrase suggesting that there are other authors involved, right? So even if an APA allows up to 20 authors, named authors on the reference page. So even if you have 35 authors, you're still going to write et al. When you get to your reference page, you will write the first 19 author on the reference page with the ellipsis, that's the 3 dots, and then of the last, which is the 35th author, you'll write that author's last name along with the year. But in the body of your paper, you're only using et al. All right. If you have a group author, sometimes you're like struggling. I'm not seeing any author's name. Remember, authors are not always individuals. Authors can be institutions. So for example, a paper could be written by UTech, right? A paper could be written by the University Hospital or the Ministry of Education. So these are things that you're looking out for, especially if you're going on sites, and some of you may be looking at apps, and of course it's a little bit different. So you may be going to different websites, and so it may not be an author, but it may be a corporation. So you'd note that. Now there are 2 things when looking at group authors. One, it may come with an abbreviation or it may not. If it comes with an abbreviation, then the very first time, which is captured in first citation, if you're using the parenthetical citation format, then you have to spell out the entire name of the institution. So National Institute of Mental Health or the National Solid Waste Authority Agency or something to that effect. And then now in squared parentheses, this is when you use those squared brackets on your computers, you give the abbreviation followed by the year, right? Every other time, that's what we mean by subsequent citation. Every other time, you are no longer going to be writing National Institute of Mental Health. You have already established that the first time you have used it. And so every other time you use that source, you will simply give the abbreviation. All right? And it's similar for the narrative, except that only the abbreviation and the year will be in parentheses, and then every other time that you use it, the year alone will go in parentheses. If the group author does not have an abbreviation, then unfortunately you're going to have to write out the name of the company, the name of the institution every time that you are citing the source. So what do we need to do? We just need to have this document and use it every single time that we are citing our work. So we can make.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Which I know the answer to. Like, because I only found this out like maybe in the last 3 years, maybe. Why would APA, I know the answer already. Why would they, when there's over, first, why in the world would any paper be over 20 authors? That's not a real answer. That's rhetorical.
Why would they do what?
That's not the question. The rhetorical question was, why was any paper over 20 authors? That's not the real question. So if there is a paper with over 20 authors,
oh, believe me,
go figure.
there
Hold on
are.
now. Go figure. It's mostly in medicine and public health. But
Yeah,
when there are those papers with that kind of thing, or maybe some big psychological study, which there's a lot of research funding. Because a lot of research funding is not going to be there. But that's not the question. The question is, so you have all these people on this research project and they got a lot of money. So why is the last person included? I know the answer. Because you just told them to include it, like whatever. Why is the last person's name there? So the first 19 and then dot, and then the last one. Why?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure no student, can any student guess why this is the case? No guesses? Well, since nobody's guessing, you can give us the answer.
All right, so well, me myself, I'm
says,
very conflicted about it myself.
It is very strange. Cassandra says alphabetical order. No, Cassandra, it doesn't go. So the first author is always supposed to be the person who did the most work. That person is called the primary investigator, supposedly. So the first person should be the person who did the most work always.
And usually is the corresponding author.
Right, and also is there, which means the person who have an email that you go back and forward them.
Right. Right, and so as it moves on, the very last author really would be the least of the contributors, right? And it's also not necessarily the case, you know, because as I'm learning with some of these collaborative pieces, sometimes the first author is not necessarily the major contributor, but because I get to understand that's the strategy for publishing several papers. So you find that the same 30 persons throughout the entire year end up publishing 30 authors. Yes. So they switch the roles each time.
But then there is something called self-plagiarism. Oh, but you give me a different answer than I expect.
No, so man, I'm saying what they're doing, they're publishing 30 papers.
That are not the same.
Right, not the same. So they just switch the role. Yes, I guess they're being generous to ensure that everybody is a main.
But let me give you a different answer. See what happened? But I realize that every discipline is different. So in medicine and public health, there is a standard, no matter what. The last author is supposed to be the second most senior. So for example, if you're doing a PhD, always or a big study, the professor emeritus or the professor is last. However, in some other disciplines, the most minor one goes last. So because different disciplines have different expectations, when in some disciplines the last author is supposed to be the second most significant.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But yes, there's a lot of but people are serious academics. There's a lot of discussion and problems with the order of the list. Anyway, moving on to the next topic.
All right, so we move on to talk about citation managers, and I think that you will love this because this is where you're lazy, and I understand why, because especially doing a research, it means that you are using multiple sources, and if you don't manage them, it can get out of hand and you can be in a lot of trouble. And so you want to ensure that you try to use a citation manager. I am recommending these two because I have used them briefly just when I was learning about different citation managers, and they are actually free to use. So when we talk about citation managers, we're looking at software tools that generally help you to collect, organize, and share your references. So you're working as a team. So what these citation managers do, they collect your PDFs, whatever source citation or references that you have, and they organize it into a personal library. And then what they can also do, they can integrate it into Microsoft Word to create your citations for you from your library. So again, you can use that. So instead of using Microsoft Word, you can link one of these citation tools and integrate it with Microsoft Word, and you'll get a more accurate thing. And by the way, citation managers are not 100% accurate either, and so you will still have to edit and make sure that there's consistency across the board. All right, so of course, I know that you're all working. Once you have this big project working on, you have quite a lot of things to use, so there are benefits. So Mendeley and Zotero, and as I said, they are free. I know that UTech also uses RefWorks, so this is you can definitely try out RefWorks, and I use RefWorks, and I'm of the three, RefWorks is actually the one that I really prefer, and I spend most of the time using. All right, so RefWorks, since the university has that, and of course you access it through the Calvin McCain library, then you can also utilize RefWorks if you want, or you can simply, if you are that type where, if you are disciplined enough, where you, as you find a source, you cite it and you make a note of it, whether or not, let me just stop sharing for a second. So let's say that you are doing research, right? Let me get a blank page. And I don't use Google, especially if you're going for research. So you want to try to get Google Scholar, right? So you use Google Scholar to ensure that you are using scholarly sources. So you go to Google Scholar and you type your research in. So let's say you're looking at benefits of teamwork, writing a paper on that. All right. What I love about Google Scholar, it allows you to sort by date. So of course, we know you want to be using relevant current information. So I'm going to give a 2018 to 2022 search. I put that in, and of course, right away, it gives me very current information. And so what I can do, simply use the cite button here, and I know if you go again using UTech's library and you go on EBSCOhost or you go on Procris or any of these databases, they usually have these find and cite tools that you can use. So you just simply click on cite, and of course here it says APA 7th edition, and you simply just copy it. I'm gonna paste it in the chat, but that's really not where I would want to. But you save that to your document that you would have. And again, it may not be 100% perfect, but you would do that. So if you are one of those disciplined persons where every time you find a document, you have your reference list for your project and you just quickly do this, then it's easy for you to fix this up rather than getting your document.
Literally, I think I saw a paper yesterday or in the last few days that I saw a nice paper in Nature. Sorry, for those who don't know, Nature is one of the leading scientific journals. And Google Scholar actually had a reference without putting Nature on it. I was like, oh, so yes, because I wanted to refer to it, I copied it and I just typed Nature, and I made a note to myself in my head, I need to go and look at the article and type out the literal reference, because I don't know how the Google Scholar seem to have forgotten, you know, the volume and the number. Yeah. But it's usually correct, but it's not correct every single time.
It happens.
And it was a seminal article, you know, like it had like hundreds of citations for this paper. So I was just like shocked. I was like, look at this seminal article, and they don't even have it right.
Right. I also want to show you something. And again, these are resources that I can share with you if you so desire. I know that most of you would not necessarily have a manual. I shared these with the library. I'm not sure if they are available to all students. I know I share them with my academic writing students, but I can literally share with you my entire folder with the APA resources if you want. So when you go to Google Scholar that we just did, and as you heard Miss Muir mention, sometimes there are little things that they just miss off. Sometimes the page number wrong. When you go back to the article, you say, oh, them cite 105, and when you look, it's actually 104. So there are mistakes, right? Because it's machine, and sometimes for some reason of the sort, they get it wrong. Not a lot of things, but sometimes there's at least one thing to correct. So if it was a journal article, You can look here, look at all that should be done, and you mirror that. This guide has everything, including how to cite a tweet, a podcast, an infographic, everything. It's all there. So I can actually share this resource with you, or the APA resources with you as well, if it is that you need, and how to overall create that reference page. So this is something that I can share with you guys. All right. Where am I? So if you are disciplined, a find and cite method could be used. Bear in mind that you're going back to editing. All right, and then now we move to talk about editing of papers. So of course, because writing is a process, you spend the time to get the research. While writing up, you're not focusing on mistakes that are likely to be made, and we're not perfect, and we will have mistakes from time to time. The best of us, including myself, there are times when you have to get an editor. So if you are able to, you want to ensure, I know this is the process where students tend to neglect the most. It's frustrating, and you just want to get it, you're just tired to look on the paper, you know, it was stressing you out so much that you just want to get rid of it and just load it on your lecturer or whoever to get it, and you don't want to read it no more. But that's not good, because sometimes when you look back at some silly mistakes that you have made, perhaps when you were tired, and little typo errors that could possibly have implications on the overall grade you receive. And so it's important that you review your paper. Sometimes I'm reading journal articles and you slightly pick out errors, and sometimes some of these are papers that would have gone through professional editing services. So editing is not something that we take lightly. And we edit, when we look at editing, we're not just looking at editing, we're also looking at proofreading. I know that many individuals think of them as one of the same, but that's not the case. So when we edit on several levels. I'm going to focus on 3. Your content. You want to ensure that what you are presenting is factual. You have met whatever requirements you have been mandated to produce, right? Your organization. Do I have all the sections that are necessary? Do I have an appropriate title? Do I have my abstract and keywords, my intro, my methodology, all these areas? Do I have those? How you structure your paragraphs. You want to make sure that the sentences are presented in a sequential and logical manner, covering organization, right? Those are things that you're looking. And of course, APA formatting. You have to ensure that you edit for APA, and this is where you're looking now to ensure that there's consistency throughout. Not touching how we edit APA yet, because I'm going to show you, introduce you to a tool, if you don't know it already, that you can use to help you with your APA formatting. Editing and proofreading. So editing, this is where you may be making revision to your content and so on. Proofreading now is where you look at those surface level errors, your spelling, making sure that there are no typo errors. So you go through your spell check, or you use Grammarly, but make sure that Grammarly is matched with the English that you are using. So are we using British English, or are you using American English? Because you know, if it's say American, then some of your spelling, it might highlight it as incorrect, and they're not. And as KIT students, I expect that you're utilizing the different apps that are there. You know, research is not an easy process, and so we have to learn how to be smart and utilize apps that are created to make things easier for us. So the Grammarly is there. You can use that. Not only does it help you with spelling, but overall subject-verb agreement, making sure that you're writing in the active voice and not the passive. Any error that you're likely to have, grammatical error, those tend to be picked up in Grammarly. It will also highlight possible cases of plagiarism. And so that is something that you can also use to guide you. All right. And then, of course, now we talk about the editing of our APA. And there is a site, and I actually use this. It was free for a very long time. And sadly, about a month ago, I received an email from the owner, the developer of the site, saying that in the initial years, we were the first set of persons to actually use the site. And based on what we have done, they were able to make changes and improvement to it. And so now they have added a pricing feature. So the pricing is still not bad, and they still also offer a free version, which will not it doesn't take away from the fact that someone is paying. You still get the same service. It's just that you are limited to how many times you can use. So we're going to stop here, and I'm going to move over to reciteworks.com. Very good site. As I said, I use this when I was submitting my doctoral thesis, and it picked up everything that I missed out, and was really able to help me in correcting all that I had. So you can do one of two things. You can decide to create an account by logging in, or you can just log in with your Google thing. All right, so I'm going to go to log in, and I usually use this email. Which is not now. All right, so what I'm going to do, all right, so what it does, it really checks to ensure that everything that you use in your in-text is on your reference page, and vice versa, and as well as if there are specific issues with your in-text site. So if the in-text is not cited properly, if the reference page not cited properly, then they point out all of that, right? So what it does, the free version, it allows you 4 uploads each day. So if you're not actively involved in research, you don't need to go beyond the free access. The owner is still very considerate and says that he still wants to attract a lot of persons to the site, and so they have decided to ensure that the free version still allows people to utilize it. So if you're not somebody that has an active need to do these checks, then the free version works for you. 4 uploads per day. What does it
actually do?
It helps you in editing, making sure that your APA is well formatted.
Oh.
So it checks the first 5,000
where's the link?
Where
is ReciteWorks?
Reciteworks.com, okay. Right? And then if you want 1 month, then that's like $8, right? If you want to do a monthly subscription, then it is it's $6 per month, right? So they start, and of course they keep giving you different discounts, and then of course
not anybody here is willing to pay, not even me. So why go through the other ones?
Right. So. I'm just telling them if it is that they want to consider anything like that. But as I said, the free version actually works fine for you. All right, so let me go back here. So if you just log in, you just update a paper, and I'm going to randomly upload a research paper that I have started working on, not yet through, so may be able to get a whole heap of APA errors. Where am I with this paper? All right. So I have uploaded my paper, or you could have copied and pasted it if you wanted. So I decided to just upload, and then you click check. Oh crap. Oh yeah. So you see what this means here? The paper I've uploaded, guys, it does not have a reference page yet. Jesus, it's on a different page. All right, so let me try a different research that I believe I got. That's still not yet published. What's this paper called again? E-profile. Okay, e-tailored to fit. All right, so I have uploaded. No, cancel. So I now need to check. What? All right. Let me figure out this. I'm sure the paper is I may have to just select another paper that I have. I thought it had a reference page. Oh, okay, it doesn't. Now I see why it's not doing. So let me just find another paper. All right, give me 1 second. Let me find this paper, guys.
Hello.
Yes, I'm coming with the paper. All right, so I have found a paper that has a reference page, because if it doesn't have a reference page, they are not able to do what they want to do. All right, so I can now go back to share my screen. All right, so I'm going to be uploading the paper at this time. Paper that we are working on. All right. All right, good. So, and it is a work in progress. So you realize that it is telling me quite a lot of things, and it is pointing out that there is in fact a problem with my reference list. It says the references at the end of your work are separated in a way that is confusing recite. Normally it can intelligently work around these issues, but occasionally it needs your help, and it highlights why this thing is. But because this is a because I was working in Google Docs and I just went and downloaded it without fix it up a little bit, then some things are not very clear cut. I'm going to ignore that, but I want you to see this. All right, there are, based on the magnitude of the paper that I'm looking at, it far exceeds what they are giving me. But if you look, there are 90 issues that needs to be fixed in my in-text citation. So it goes through, it tells me that there is some form of mismatch taking place. So here in my in-text, or my reference page I am looking, in one instance, I am saying Hall and Colson, 2011. And then on my reference page, I have all, it's because I have Sheila Colson here, rather than having a comma to show that based on how it is. And because APA says that you're only giving the person's first initial and the last name, this is confusing. So right away, I get to see that this is a problem and I am able to correct it, right? Then once you do that, and then if you click, notice that you see the little magnifying glass here. If you click on it, it takes you directly to your paper and points out the error that you have there. So you know exactly where to go to make that change. That's what I love about this program. And then once you would have gone to your paper, you'd have made the change, you go back to your second one and you do the very same thing. There is some issue taking place here based on what is highlighted. So they tell you that this is some year mismatch. So in one instance, you said it was 2013, but in citing, it is saying 2016. So I need to decide whether it's 2013 or 2016. So I would need to go back to this document just to make sure that I have the correct one. All right. And of course, you go through all of these and you make the relevant changes. And as I said, this is quite a lot of errors to fix because this is a work in progress, and I was so more focused on getting the information in, and then I will do my editing afterwards. And this is what I will actually be going in. And there are still other issues that are there that I will need to focus on. Clearly, your paper will not be this much, and so you won't have to worry about having an upgrade to anything. Then you will go to your reference list once you're through, and the very same thing. So here I have a source, and it is saying that, yes, I have this on my reference page, but they cannot find it in my anywhere in the body of my paper. And that is something I need to pay attention to. It is also saying that I have 10 alphabetical order issues. And we know that words must be in, when giving your listing, it has to be in alphabetical order. All right, so and what will happen, there will be an arrow showing what it is should go ahead of. It's a pretty cool resource. Trust me.
The tool software, I never even heard of this, but the tool software you've mentioned, the reference managers, which I don't teach. If you actually use the reference managers and this, you can go a far way. And
it goes.
We haven't mentioned Turnitin. I don't even know how to use it when you're not, to cut down the possible plagiarism. Yeah. But when software are well designed, they can actually reduce the amount of work that you are physically doing.
Yes, definitely. So you see this here? This is showing that this should be done. There is some this shows that when you see these arrows, this is one of the things that pointing out that it is not in the alphabetical order that it should be. So these are things that you would pay attention to. So it's a really nice document that you can use and go through. If you want to learn even more about it, there's a tour that provides you with an overview, a demo, but it's pretty straightforward for you to use. As I said, just put in reciteworks.com. You have 4 uploads per day, and I'm sure you're not using, you're not writing 30 or 40 pages like I am doing based on my requirements. So you won't have to worry about upgrading at any point in time. So reciteworks.com, and you can just log in with your regular Google information, and you will have access to the document. So please make sure you utilize these to help you when you are ready to edit and to make sure that your APA citations are intact with what you need to do. All right, so we would have spent, as we went through the discussion, I would have highlighted common errors that are likely to take place, the different pitfalls. So generally, one major error, sometimes persons count graphs and tables as one, or figures and tables. So because they have table 1, then the figure would be figure number 2. It's a different list. So you'd have to have a list with all your tables, and you have a list with all your figures, and they are numbered separately but consecutively as well. Grammar is another thing. Poor use of language, typographical errors. You want to ensure, as I said, it's not a sprint race. This is not a Usain Bolt race. It's a Mofar, it's one of those 10,000 meter races that you're running with research. It takes time. It takes a lot of due diligence. So you have to ensure that you go through and you spend the time. You can't look at this when you're tired. You need breaks, and different persons will need to do different things at different time. Even on the Microsoft Word, you have a read aloud. Sometimes you don't want to read, have the thing read it back to you, and sometimes just hearing it, you can identify, put this sound off. Let me take back a look at this, and you can come back with your team members and you go through together, and you go through with your changes. All right, so these are some of the things that I thought you needed to know. And this brings me to the end of the presentation. I don't know if you have any questions for me. No questions? Okay, so Miss Muir, I guess we have no questions. So thank you all for having me.
Drew says.
Okay.
Drew, he's in my he said great presentation.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, let me just show something while you're still here. Just give me a second. I'm going to show 2 things. For the screen. Let's close this. I have students. Where is this? Let's go to this. This is what I want to show. So this is not APA, but I've only been able to find that there are 2 projects that have been published. If there are more than 2, I don't know about them. No, 3, you know. I forgot about mine. Yes, there's one I published. Anyway, so it's back to this. So I know of 3 major projects that have been published. But here's one that's actually available online. So Dr. Pacey Shaw, she supervised these students in 2018, and it was published in a conference in 2019. Now, this is not an APA format, it's an engineering conference, so it uses an engineering, but I'm just, you can, I guess I can put the title, you can Google it.
Right, yes, please, thanks.
I'm put the, but I'm about to show you guys something. I'm opening for a reason, not just to tell you it's been done. Where's the chat again? Chat.
And oh, one other thing while that is being shared, this is exactly what we want to do, students. So when you spend the time to work on this research, you don't want it to go by wasting, right? Try to get, if you work hard on your paper, I am sure that Miss Muir is more than happy to work with you, and I'm sure she has to get other
oh, well, we have a paper prize. So we actually have a paper prize this year.
Try to get this paper published in your research, published in a journal. You can't just do your research and just let it leave there. Send it out so that other persons can, like-minded persons can read about the hard work that you have done, just like other students here.
Right. So on that note, there are 2 things to note. There's a major project paper prize this year. So the 2 best papers will actually get money. It's on the document, guys. and we're also encouraging people to publish. So yes, so that's definitely in the works. So just to show you now, so this is not APA, so this one has the reference is 1, 2, 3. But what I'm showing you now is the decisions about the pictures. So it's columns. So you have figure 1, which is a table, and then some
And
other
these tables
figures.
are not even too far from APA,
Right.
just
What I'm showing you though is that, guys, remember that your tables don't need to be large. What some of you do is you go to tables and you just make them too large. So what I like about them is they have the data without being massively large. You can resize things. You're all computing students. So I'm showing you this for a purpose. And if you scroll down here, see the graph, see how the graph in the little teeny column fits, and you can actually compare computing and engineering, and similar here, computing and engineering, whatever they're asking. This is about whether entrepreneurship education is effective at UTech, and does it prepare people for entrepreneurship careers, and that's the responses. And you can even look what's nice. These are nice figures, right? So that's just showing you that this actually was a major project publication. So that's what I wanted to show, and I want to leave this for another time. Right. So this was this project, I'm still waiting for the actual one, was also published. So using AO, this is artificial intelligence. So they didn't follow your rules. So they should be using artificial intelligence and Internet of Things for autonomous pothole detection. This project was really good. They both published and they were on TV. This was 2 years ago. 2020, a 2020 project.
And guys, this is why we do research. This is why we do research. It feels nice when we know that we can get our work published and other persons can make reference. So please don't just treat it as a major project, but look at the benefits that can be garnered from this.
So, and the last thing, which you guys have already seen it on the where is it? I don't know. I think I've now lost it. Anyway, I want to just, you already have it. So the last thing today is to really just look at the updated schedule. So you have the right, you have this. Right. So the last thing today, which I want to show, let me see, it's not on the screen. Or I can have to come off. I'm a very indisciplined person. Look how much things I have open. Did you see my screen? It's not opening. Wait, let me stop sharing and open this again. Or let me just open it from another way. Why is it not opening? Or is it open already? Maybe it's open already. Oh, here it is. There we go. So I can close this. There we go. So it's not open because it's open already. Okay, great. So let me go back to Zoom and share. So I'm sharing this. So everybody, I think everybody's seen it. So this is the draft. So so far I've gotten a response from one supervisor who is telling me that that project is not ready. So I'll just go down to the end. Two things I'm showing you. So this is a list of all the staff members. You're going to be emailing them what I've asked you to email. But see here, research paper, first place 20,000, second place 10,000, software artifact, first place 20,000, which is coming from Sagicor. So at the end of the Viva presentation, we're going to figure out a number of projects that are eligible, and then we're going to have a second go at you're going to edit your research paper in order to be eligible for these prizes.
I would like to come to this presentation. Please invite me.
Oh, sure, definitely. And then the thing here at the top, just again, along the same line, the research report, you're going to have a cover page, an abstract. We're really broad right now, 200 to 500 words, which will have at a minimum the problem statement, the research questions or the aims, the methods, which is typically the design, sampling, the types of instruments, the results and conclusion, right? You have to find a way to summarize that in the abstract. And by the way, every single thing that you've been looking at Google Scholar in your articles, the papers you've been looking at, they have abstracts. Look at those abstracts to help. Remember, as Dr. Tanisha said, the last thing you have to do is write the abstract. You don't do that first. So you're going to write a paper and you don't even, since you all should have had an introduction already, you're going to look at the introduction last. Remember, you did an introduction essentially for your proposal. So you can look at that last. What you need to focus on is getting your results and your conclusions to match your research question. So you want to have a paper that's going to include the background literature review, the methods, the conclusions, the recommendations. And I said, obviously it's going to have graphs and tables. Well, it could be tables or graphs. So maybe I should have put and or. Just a reminder, a paper don't have page breaks. Don't keep, the only page break is after cover page and after, when you finish the whole paper, then the reference is just when there's a page break. I'm tired of seeing that mistake. And then you don't have to, but the best papers actually have a discussion section where you discuss how your paper compares to previous papers or previous other kinds of projects. And obviously you must answer the research question. If you have one, answer it. If you have two, answer two of them. If you have three, answer all three. If you didn't answer one, take it out. And you're expected to include recommendations for practice and recommendations for future research. My suggestion is get together your slideshow. After you do the slideshow, write the paper in that order. That's my suggestion. Because remember, you're not going to be reading word for word from the slideshow, and then you can use the paper and put in some cue cards, like electronically. But if you are not able to, if you're not a expert on your project, you can be reading in an interesting fashion from your project. It's always better for you to be able just to talk without reading, but if you have to read, it should be reading from the screen. That's from last week's presentation, but I'm just reminding you. We're not coming there to be bored for you to have a slideshow and you're reading word for word from the slideshow. That is not what you're doing. Anybody has any questions? So I'm going to basically stop about now, unless there's some burning questions. Since Mr. White couldn't join us and since this went longer than I expected, Mr. White is able to come on Thursday at 3. And the primary reason, Mr. White, remember he's a program director for this program, is to look at what is expected for the prototype. So we will meet to talk about what's expected for the prototype. That really shouldn't have to take more than half an hour. Anybody with any burning questions? So everybody has seen that everybody who's here has seen their names on the major project Viva schedule. I presume that that's correct. I know for those who don't know, there are 10 groups that are not on the project schedule right now. So I assume that that's nobody who's here right now. So everybody who's here is on schedule to present on May 31st. If there's a problem, your supervisor needs to email me. If you just don't show up, that's a major project. You're going to be deducted now. So guys just don't show up at your major project. That's what happened last year. That led to all kind of problems. If you're having a problem, reach out to your supervisor who will reach out to me. But if there's any question right now, we can